want to now take the quiz real quick?
That's what I was going to talk to you.
Yeah. You can write on this. Yes, just put the letter right next to the number. Because that'll be extra copy. Okay. Anybody else going to take the quiz? Just grab a pencil and leave my presence. Okay, you can stay. Just quick run on the hall and do it. You can write on this. And put your name on it and put the letters right next to the numbers. Okay, right? You heard that? Cool. I didn't want that. You didn't want that. Letters right next to the numbers. All right, so you guys want a quiz on Wednesday? Yes, we're gonna have a quiz! Yay! 749 to 775. I know we're going backwards in time. We got a time machine. So what's going to be done on Tuesday? I'm going to make it do on Wednesday. Late? Okay. And then today, I'm just finalizing my final. I'm going to type in a bunch of grades, so then I'll get back to getting the address tomorrow. Again, it's pretty much working. 749 to 777, 775. Who needs the review list for the test? Anybody?
No said yet.
People like you. Yeah, the semester final review list. Anybody not have that? You should have it.
I don't know where it is.
They need to get theirs. All right, so let's go get your notes out. Let's go and finish up this last little bit of Reconstruction, talk about the New South, bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to get to the plan finally. I know, it's pretty horrible. At least the sun is out. Hey, I can for all of you. Why did you talk about that? 25 below zero for Friday. I know. Lasting through a hot You're gonna make it walk all the way back over there. Who's gonna?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, wow, okay. It's a win-win then. Okay, so did we get to the 14th Amendment? We did not, did we? Oh, we did get to know women not having rights. I like how I said that so matter of fact. Like, yeah, not a big deal.
I just said.
Oh, what was that congressional Reconstruction? What was that law passed? What was that law? That set up congressional Reconstruction divided up. Yeah. Yeah, Military Reconstruction Act. And what amendment would get rid of slavery except as a punishment for a crime? Yeah. And what were the laws passed by those Dixiecrat governments that were, in essence, almost like slavery again? Yeah, those black codes. And they would kind of come back again, known as Jim Crow law. So we did get this. Where's my mouse? Did we get to the 15th? Okay, so 15th, this is 1870. This would later on be amended to the Military Reconstruction Act. And okay, you don't have to write this down, but read that once you write down. Now, what does that say? What does that actually say? What right is given by the 15th Amendment? Hmm? Does it give the right to vote? They cannot be denied the right to vote based upon race, color, or previous condition of servitude, aka slavery. Does it say you have the right to vote? All it says is the vote can't be taken away based upon color of skin or if you were a slave. Do you catch that? It doesn't say there's the right to vote. Nowhere in the United States Constitution does it say you have the right to vote. To this day. It only says the right to vote cannot be taken away. So I can't pass a law that says, people with flat hair can't vote, or Congress can't. But it doesn't mean there can be, or there can't be laws that restrict the vote. Certain things that apply to everybody, technically, when they could be specifically designed to apply to one type of people. That's why millions of votes every year are not counted. The 15th Amendment is very lacking. They do not have to count your votes according to this. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to count your votes, but the point is, it is a very flawed amendment. So, just like women are not guaranteed rights under the 14th Amendment in the United States Constitution to this day, you are not guaranteed the right to vote. Now, there was talk about maybe doing something about this and to alleviate some of the issues with this, but it did not pass. There's actually some talks about cutting out some of the loopholes. It was part of the Biden's initial proposal, but it couldn't pass through the Republican filibuster in the Senate. So this is the way it is right now. And what about women? Women, it's only for citizens. That's why Susan B. Anthony's going to run for president in 1876. Of course, she knew she wasn't going to win, or 1872. That wasn't the point. That point was to make it, or show how clear it was that women are denied this right, and she wanted to make it seem ridiculous. They actually arrested her for disturbing the peace because they had to find some reason to arrest her, to get her to shut up. But this is going to be then a fight within the women's rights movement for the next, well, it's going to go on for 50 years, but also long afterwards. Because what's more important? The women's right to vote or equal rights based upon race? And it's going to be a divide on color of skin in the women's rights movement that will go on, well, I'm going to say the 1970s, but even beyond that. So the 15th Amendment was a seriously lacking bill. But I should add one thing. Johnson did everything he could to actively oppose the Congressional Reconstruction. Did not enforce the laws. In fact, he went out and denounced the laws, did these kind of outrageous rallies, sometimes in meeting halls, sometimes just on the back of trains. They were called whistle-stop tours, when he would tour place to place, and they would be these kind of weird, drunken, almost like a riot would get started and get people all fired up about the Republicans trying to take over, destroy your government. And it was really just almost unhinged what's going to happen with President Johnson. And you combine that with the anger Congress had and the anger against each other, that would lead to its impeachment. They actually voted to impeach him before they had any charges. Now, impeachment is a purely political measure. All the Constitution says is high crimes and misdemeanors, but it has nothing to do with like a legal crime. Congress decides what the crime was. The founders almost certainly were thinking about corruption, but Johnson was violating the Constitution. He was not enforcing law, and that is the job of the president. They would eventually come up with 14 charges. Now, there was the Tenure of Office Act and a couple other ones that were made specifically to try to trap Johnson into a crime, but they really didn't need this. The unhinged attacks Johnson was making against the law that he was supposed to be enforcing, that he wasn't, would have been enough. This was pretty shocking. The first president to be impeached. but it requires 2/3 of the Senate, only majority in the House. And so, as you know, they came out 1 vote short. 1 vote short of the 2/3. Every Democrat in the Senate voted to acquit. Every Democrat. And that's the way it's going to be on 3 of the 4 impeachments. The members of the party of the person who's impeached, Clinton and then Trump, for 3 of them, also for the next 2. So for Clinton, all the Democrats voted to acquit. For Trump, all the Republicans voted to acquit. Trump's last impeachment, some Republicans voted to convict, but it wasn't enough for the 2/3. That was on the January 6th insurrection. The one about withholding weapons and support for Ukraine to try to get political dirt on Joe Biden, that one no Republicans voted for. So there's lots of reasons why a few Republicans also voted to acquit. And the big reason was 1868's coming up, or it's here, the election is coming. Democrats do not want Johnson. They don't want him. And therefore, we'll let him just leave office. Looking back, if he committed a crime, and Congress believed that, they probably should have impeached. They probably should have convicted, but they didn't. So, 1868, Grant would win, and you'll notice, now this one, the Republican states are blue, that's my continuous anger against the red state, blue state thing for 2000, so I always try to find maps that don't have the red state, blue state thing. So blue are Republican in this one. And you'll notice there are a number of states, first off, green ones, technically they're still being reconstructed. But look at the southern states. And then look at 1872. Even more southern Republicans. And that is because the Army was protecting voters and protecting people who were enrolling. And you can see how divided the electors were in some of the southern states. Those are one where the Army had left. So Grant would be elected twice. He wanted to run again. He kind of liked being president. Kind of liked it. So Republican rule. I have no idea why I abbreviated this. Like I got really tired and I just couldn't do those last few letters. I just needed a break. But Republican rule. Man, this was rebuilding of the South. And the big thing they invested public money on was public education. So there was no set rule for public education to this day. It was a tradition more in the North because of the Enabling Act and the Northwest Ordinance. But public education became an important facet after Civil War as a representation of equality. But it's always going to be behind in the South. Public education will never be as funded as well as the North, even though it's not going to be funded all that well in the North. And public education will come up to a real big hit when segregation is going to be outlawed in 1954. All these segregation academies, they call them, where all white private schools started. And that's going to begin the trend of starting to put public money into private schools, which we're at now. So one thing about this is taxes are going to go up. And that is going to be the cry of Southern Democrats. Your taxes are going to them. Just like, what was that bureau that was created to help former slaves, even though it was always small? That was the argument they used against it. What was that bureau that was created? Yeah, the Freedmen's Bureau. So, there's Highland Rebels right here. The first member of the Senate, also members of the House. There weren't that many, but it was a significant number. And Republicans did take control of many House assemblies. By 1890, that's going to be totally reversed. I'll show you why in a sec. So the Republicans in this not only became associated with civil rights. They started to call themselves, even though they're not as old as the Democrats, they started calling themselves the Grand Old Party. And that's why you might see the Republicans labeled as the GOP. I sometimes call the Republicans the GOP and have no thought process of me doing it. I'm just so used to saying GOP. And that was just what they call themselves. You get two. These are worth on the black market. You only get one. It would also be during this era, this is from 1868, of the Republicans. I showed you this once before. Thomas Nast, same guy did Santa Claus, will be drawing the Republicans crushing the New York machine. Horatio Seymour, who ran against Grant in 1868, was part of the New York Democratic machine. The elephant meant union. But once the Republicans got tied to civil rights, which they're going to run away from by 1876, Democrats, of course, both Northern and Southern, to discredit them, that's where you get the black Republicans. So this is just 8 years later. So the Republicans try to do the elephant. They tried right away. They liked that idea. Look at that horrible caricature from a Democratic newspaper of the elephant, this horrible caricature, so much like that one I showed you about earlier, from justifying slavery all the way through to that one about the Freedmen's Bureau. And it's showing the army, because they're implying that the army is protecting them for this black Republican rule. And it really was very divisive. So, scalawags, those were Southern Democrats. Oh, that's what Southern Democrats, when they looked at this new growing Southern Republican Party, especially Southern whites who voted Republican. And it also convinced Southern Democrats of one other very important thing. They got to get involved in the political system. A lot of them abandoned it because they were so mad about the effects of losing the Civil War. But by 1872, more and more Southern whites realized we have to get involved to take, as they saw, take back our governments. And these are almost got to ask the question. Two cartoons from this era. One's a political cartoon, a Democratic cartoon. One is an ad for the Democratic Party. So first off, what did they call Northerners who came south to discredit them? What was the name for them? Yeah, carpetbaggers. So this is scalawag and carpetbagger rule. Notice that's supposed to be a carpetbag. And they're forcing a Southern white now to shine the shoes of a freedman. And the whole thing about this is, not so much shining the shoes, is your wealth is now going to them. And like I said, they did not hide the color of skin. They used race to get political power. Just like slaveholders used race to control half slaves, to justify slavery. The two platforms, the Democratic platform is for the white man. The Republican platform is for the Negro and the carpetbagger. And these were all over these placards by 1872, but especially 1876. And that stereotype is pretty horrible. And it's no coincidence then. Once Southern white Democrats started getting involved, that's where you get the beginning of the Ku Klux Klan. It's to fight scalawags, to stop blacks, carpetbaggers. The first leader was Nathan Bedford Forrest, even though he really didn't have a lot to do with the actual creation of it. He was more of a figurehead. He would eventually leave it. The great cavalry commander, not that he was morally opposed, he was just exhausted. But the big thing about the Ku Klux Klan, their number one goal was to keep blacks from voting, and therefore disrupt the Republican Party. Also, scalawags, as they called them too. First off, so when I was a little kid, I first heard about the Ku Klux Klan. I thought they were saying Ku Klux Klan. And so to this day, I want to say Ku Klux Klan. Is anybody else like that? It's just, yeah, I want to say Ku Klux Klan. I can't help it. I got to focus on Ku Klux Klan. Anyone know what Ku Klux means? Yeah, just the circle. Like implying like a secret society, a secret circle. Has no other real meaning. And that's this cartoon. It's of a lynching, and it's the KKK. And they would put these little handbills as a warning to Republicans in the South, black or white, but especially black, and implying you vote Republican and you'll be lynched, and thus the carpetbagger. They picked a state, Ohio. Not at random. Grant was born in Ohio. So, Ohio. And the Klan, there'd be other groups. Knights of the White Camellia was another very well-known terrorist group. And they were just terrorists. Absolute terrorists. And it's to make Republican voters, especially blacks who are Republicans, so terrified they don't vote. And the other big goal is to destabilize that government, to make these Reconstruction governments ineffective, and then they can turn around and say, look what happens when you allowed freemen, them to rule. They're incompetent. And so they would attack people trying to enroll voters. They would attack people at ballot boxes. They would attack government officials. Here is a picture from New Orleans in 1866 of white voters quasi-militia trying to attack black voters. Just make it so miserable. Then they can turn around and say, see, they can't govern. It is terrorism, or it's a little like organized crime, like mafia, going to stores and basically saying, boy, it's a shame if something happens to your store, but you pay me, I'll protect it. It's basically extortion. By the way, when the mafia comes, organized crime goes to somebody's storefront and says, be ashamed if something happened to your store, I'll protect it. Protect it from whom? Them. The mob will destroy the store. So that's kind of what was happening here. And the most famous would be the Colfax Massacre. 1873. There were a line of black men trying to enroll to vote. And normally the army would have been there, but the army was not there. The cavalry, there was cavalry supposed to be there, but they weren't there. White militia organized for one purpose, to try to disrupt blacks from voting. This is not any government. This is just white, a lot of former Confederates, but white anti-Reconstruction. 150 blacks would be murdered. Here they are fighting back. There'll be over 20. This was the most bloody as an effort to stop Reconstruction. And then they turn around and say, see, they can't even protect their voters, black misrule. So this was taken, take my years right. Talking 18 years ago I took this picture. I went to where the Colfax riot was. And this was the marker that was there. On the site, the Colfax riot occurred, which three white men and 150 Negroes were slain. Interesting way to put it. This event on April 13, 1873 marked the end of carpetbag misrule in the South, thus perpetuating that myth. This was put up by the state of Louisiana. And that's not what happened at all. But, and I wonder if this, I want to go back. I want to go back to New Orleans anyways, but I really do want to see if that's still there. There was a chance up until 2022 that might have been taken down, but not now. So Congress would pass the KKK Act. Also known as the Insurrection Act. Still on the books. Basically to put down internal disruptions, so using military force if there's seen to be an attack on the United States. Former President Trump has promised to invoke that on day one of his presidency, if he's reelected. And so, I guess, use the military to put down people who are opposed to him. Interesting times. But this would destroy the Klan. The Klan was destroyed by this act. And they put it down with U.S. soldiers. Many of them were black soldiers who were fighting against Reconstruction. They wanted to get out of their situation on the farms. The Klan would be gone. Most of the groups would disappear, at least as organized one. The Klan would reemerge in 1914, 1915. Different, not quite the same. Be more anti-immigrant, anti-Jewish, anti-Catholic. The Klan were huge in this state called Montana. They were really big in this town called, you might have heard of it, Helen. Their big target were Jewish and Chinese immigrants. Yeah, that was and so the Klan will make a return. We'll talk about that down the road. So, the Civil Rights Act of 1875 to guarantee rights to go beyond the 14th Amendment would be passed. But the Supreme Court in the next decade, in a series of 4 decisions, would basically throw out the Civil Rights Act and say, basically, that the federal government can do this, but the states don't have to enforce it. There would not be another Civil Rights Act that would be passed without any teeth in it until 1964. That's only 89 years old. 89 years old. With a Southern president, not me, Lyndon Johnson. And so, Reconstruction would be ending by this era. I know I'm going through this very fast. The Panic of 1873 was such a horrible economic disaster, including labor union or workers fighting against capital, all called the Great Upheaval. This is the Great Railroad Strike. It was called in 1877. All over the North. There's Wall Street imploding in 1873. This depression was worldwide. And you can imagine what many Northerners were saying. We have our own problems. Why do we care about the South anymore? Join yourself. And next, Grant. Grantism, Ulysses S. Grant was not as bad as president as people are going to say down the road. His image is being rehabilitated, but at the same time, there was corruption and a series of scandals, and these are all the scandals weighing him down. And that would discredit Reconstruction because Grant believed in Reconstruction. And also other disasters, but you combined the corruption, but the biggie was the panic. If the economy was still good, he probably would have skated through to a 3rd term. He wanted a 3rd term. But since the economy was so bad, the corruption came out. Next, there was intense racism in the North. And they saw it's not our problem anymore. And here's same cartoonist who did Santa Claus and the Republican elephant, showing how Northern and Southern voters are equalizing each other by showing the immigrant voters. That's a horrible caricature of an Irish immigrant, you know, it's subhuman, and freedmen. But there was intense racism. Not complete, but it didn't like go away. And sure, when the war ended, you would see people in the North saying, we want to fight for equality. But we don't want people coming up here. We want to keep what we have here the same. Remember that horrible move about the horrible talk about a white republic. And lastly, the Redeemer governments, once right Democrats started to move into power, they began to take hold. They're also called the Bourbon governments, and that biblical idea of redemption. And so here is, now this is a kind of an amazing one. This is showing Reconstruction government. But what does this uniform imply? That they're what? A prisoner, like a convict, like a criminal. So we let these criminals in power, and what do? Okay, that is actually the Declaration of Independence, but it also has an implication of like the 10 Commandments, redemption, no very religious sense, but they destroyed the state, and now they're going to come back in and fix it. Here, another one. The 2 platforms. A platform for the white man, platform for the native. That's in Georgia. So in 1876, this election, Hayes, Republicans are in real trouble. And so another war hero from Ohio, Rutherford B. Hayes, would run. Tilden was the governor of New York, and the Democratic Party ran the New York City, and so he's a Democrat. And he's got to get Southern Democratic votes, so it is obviously anti-Reconstruction. But the big thing the Democrats really hit on was corruption and the economy. The Republicans just basically said the Democrats are all traitors. And once again, blue is Republican here. Look at the difference now. Anybody want to guess? I'm not going to tell you, but I'll see if you can guess. Which states of the former Confederacy still have military enrollment of voters and protection of voters? Anybody want to guess? I don't know, it could be any 3 states. Should we get into any detail on this? Look how close the vote was. So Tilden slightly won the popular vote, but remember, that doesn't matter. All that matters are the individual elections in each state for the electors. 3 states sent 2 sets of electors. 3 states, they sent Republican electors and Democratic electors. I should add the mainstream newspapers in the North all reported the Republicans had won. It might be a little more complex. The electoral vote was then 184 for Tilden, 1 vote short of the majority, 166 for Hayes, and 19 contested votes. The only way Hayes can be elected president is all 19 from these 3 states. The Constitution does not say what to do if states send contested electors. Doesn't say. I should add, at this moment, right now, former President Trump is in front of a federal court asking for immunity for his role in trying to set up fake electors from Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, which is against the law. But he's asking for presidential immunity because they were trying to do the same thing in the 2020 election that happened here. They had this whole scheme to set up fake electors. And he's not saying it happened. But what he's saying is, I could do that because I was president. That's for immunity. And that's happening right at this moment. He's in front of federal court. And yeah, he's actually appearing in front of it to ask for immunity. It's a big deal. It's kind of amazing that contested electors, it tried to happen again in 2012. But back to this thing. So this crisis going to 1877 would be huge. You have these contested voters. The Democrats probably won at least one of those 3 states. Probably. I'm not going to value judgment on either one. I'm just saying they probably won one of them, and Tilden probably should have been president. Probably won one of those states. Well, Congress, they know what to do. So they do what Congress always does. They set up a committee, 15 members, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats, and 1 impartial member of the Supreme Court, who dropped out so the Republicans who control Congress picked another Republican. So 15 members, 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. Does anybody want to guess how the vote went on those 19 electors? Anybody? Come on, just want to guess what the vote's going to be? No way. Yeah, 3 separate votes, 8-7. Hayes got all 19. And therefore will be elected president. What do you suppose the reaction of the Democrats, especially the Southerners? I put down furious, that's an understatement. Basically, they could say, see, we knew it. Reconstruction was all a scam to take over power. You overturned an election. We will gum up the works so much in the Senate, nothing will ever get passed. Hayes, for his entire 4-year term, is going to be known as his fraudulency. By the way, his wife will be Lucy Hayes. And she'd be known as Lemonade Lucy because she was a leader of the temperance movement and refused to serve alcohol in the White House. And to mock Lemonade Lucy, people in Washington, D.C. started to call her like she thinks she's so above it. She's like the first lady, like she knows it. And that's where the term first lady came from the wife of the president. So, the compromise of 1877 would be this. Republicans went to them, basically decided, okay, are we going to fight for Reconstruction? Or do we want to fight for something else? And they decided it's something else. Hayes will be president. They made this deal. Democrats dropped opposition, but then civil rights, Reconstruction was back, and therefore civil rights. All 3 states lost military rule, and the federal government pulled back. Not completely. It's going to take about 15 years. There'll also be a Southern postmaster. That might not seem like a huge deal. It was a big deal then. There's Hayes being inaugurated. So not all Republicans, but the Republican Party, which was the party of civil rights, also they thought the party of free labor. more and more, the Republican Party, because they're the grand old party, they've been in power, they're going to become the party of capital. Give me a sec. Seen the rat? Have you guys noticed the rug? I was worried you might have forgotten. They decided capital, aka big business, overall. The Republican Party is more and more going to become the party of business. They want things like tariffs, the gold standard, no income tax, monopolies. We'll get to it. And this is from Puck magazine, and it's showing the South weighed down by Reconstruction. That's Grant sitting on a carpet bag. And this is now Hayes plowing through and letting the Southern governments thrive. No, that's not quite what happened. But what about the South? The Southern economy. We got to get to that real quick. So we already mentioned once before, Sherman promised 40 acres and a mule in the southern area right here, the Sea Islands, so right here of Georgia. But this 40 acres and a mule, some kind of compensation for slave, never happened. Never happened. There was no compensation ever to this day for the over 4 million American citizens who were exploited and robbed and tortured. Nothing. Kind of amazing. I mean, this does happen a number of times in history that people have things taken away and never get compensated, but so many. Kind of amazing. So just imagine the situation in the South. You have all of these landholders, a planter class. They have lots and lots and lots and lots of land, but no one to work it. And what do former slaves have? Or for that matter, poor whites, meaning the veterans of the war, all they have are their hands, their labor. That's all they have. And so a weird compromise is going to be made in the South. And it will fit in with those work contracts. Tenant farming. So they will rent it. They'll get some kind of work contract and rent it. They might get a little bit of food, maybe a piece of the profits, or they would have to pay an outright rent. Tenant farming is as old as there's been landholding. And here's the deal. The whole thing is going to run on debt. The tenant farmers have no money to pay. They don't have any money to live on, for food, for seed, for anything they need. And all the land they have is land. They need to sell those crops. And so everybody's in debt. And so the tenant farmers have to find a collateral so they can borrow from the landlords for seed, for a mule, for food while they plant. A collateral. Now you know what collateral is. If you borrow money, it's something you put up that the creditor can take if you can't pay back your debt. You sign it away. So basically, if you borrow something, so let's say you buy a house, you buy a car, you put up, lots of times you put up the car as your collateral, and you sign it away. Well, they had nothing except for the crop. And so they signed away their crop as collateral. The document you sign, the legal document that say you signed it away, is called a lien. So a crop lien. So basically saying, okay, at the end of the year, if I can't pay back my rent, you get part of my crop. Now, no. And so they can't pay back that lien. But yet they still got to survive, and they got to grow crops next year. So what do? They have to borrow more and borrow more. And tenant farming always comes a cycle of debt. Debt, 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 debt. And tenant farming will make a shift. It will go from a rent and a crop lien to a new document, an outright share of the crop. And this is going to be called sharecropping. And the areas of some of the highest concentration of freedmen are going to become the most sharecropping. So you have to give 50, 60, 70, 100% of your crop to pay your rent. Now, where's your money going to come from? To pay for food, to pay for seed, borrow more, get into more credit. And every single one of these contracts said no movement off of that land until you pay back your debt. And when will they pay back their debt? So what do they become? Almost like slaves. Have you heard of serfs? Serfdom? That's what serfdom was in medieval Europe. You're bound to the land by debt. And you can't leave the land. This would be poor whites and poor blacks. But since the vast majority of freedmen have nothing, the vast majority of former slaves are going to be caught in this system. And is it like slavery? Is it like serfdom? It's close. Now, it wasn't just in the South. This was nationwide. There are sharecroppers in Montana. And eventually, what's going to happen to sharecroppers? Eventually, they will be kicked off of the land. Eventually, the landlord will find a way to just get them. And I know that from personal experience. My great-great-grandfather, grandma and grandfather, my dad's side, lost their farm in Nebraska to the bank during the farm crisis of the early 1920s, and they became sharecroppers for 23 years. My dad was born on that farm. They couldn't put him into a hospital. So he was born on a sharecropper's farm. And in 1944, the bank just took the farm, kicked him out. So that happened all over. 20 years ago, the farmhouse was still there, but now it's gone. And 1890s. Just write down populist slave, and I'll finish this tomorrow. Sound good? The last effort for a multiracial democracy. You notice I put a line through it. That means, am I right here? Bell's about ready to ring? Yeah, bell's about ready to ring. What is Wednesday? Yeah, dress up day. You will. Oh, and a quiz. Should we do a quiz on the same day as dress up day?
We should put the quiz because we all already know it.
You do. You're really good. Now you want to prove it.
No, but you already know. You're confident.
I know, but I would deprive you of that right.
Oh my God.
And it's one of those books you don't really need to. You read a couple pages. Yeah. Well, of course, the way they print. Yeah. I close it that long. Yeah. What's that? I'm basing it more on, I can tell you what time and effort. Time and effort.
I went out and bought things. I'm $30 down, so that's why.
What are you going to do? What are you going to dress up as? Who? Who are you going as? Cool. No.
I got black.
Oh.
Black button friend in my life.
Where'd you get it at?
We went shopping.
No, where'd you get the
Walmart. What? We made them.
Okay, where'd you get the dress?
I don't know. Yeah, Laura.
I will. Oh, okay.
That's a clever place to
You'll
get
see.
it.
You'll
I'm
see. It's
shy.
pretty good. I gotta go.
So take kind of crazy.
On a motorcycle.
4 years ago. You know, big deal.
You wanted me to let you plan to choose that, so could maybe give
With Riverboat Gone, it's like
that week.
Riverboat Gone. Yeah, he just, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't go 4-13.
It's scary, but let me know. Just don't worry about it. We'll, and if we have to make stuff up, don't worry. Yeah, Mr. Park, keep me informed, okay?
I didn't know you were a liar and cheat. Saw you outside of your classroom.
They let me out occasionally. Where was I?
God.
Huh?
God.
Oh, I was in the office.
They let you leave?
I know. I'll probably get in trouble.
Yes.
Are you going to the library today?
I haven't decided. You want to go to the library today?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go.
Don't you have to reserve it?
Probably. Let me go see.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna do today and tomorrow. I was gonna talk about D-Day, but I know a lot of people got some work done, and so.
Yeah.
Quite
Just one sec, yeah.
So before you get, let me write the tray piece. If you have that in like basic outline of, we talk about the main idea. This is shown through, or an example of this
Exactly.
is,
Yes.
and then this led to, we can have that in the actual thing as we're doing. Okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you know, you probably don't do it every single time, it's gonna be boring, but yeah.
Well, it did like work, but.
Yeah, that's the basic format.
Well, yeah, that's just
An
the way
example
they-
of it or it in action, you're ready.
Yeah, but that's how I just like make it word, because that way my brain was numbers. Or it allowed my brain to transition.
And the thing about it is, that's what you do for a body paragraph in an essay. Brief explanation, examples, like you do those in the documents, and then why it's important.
Well, yeah, but just actually just saying an example of this is like having a transition.
Yeah, exactly, that's all you need. Yes. Somebody blow them out. And I got
Sure is.
you would have. Well, you can't break my new.
Doesn't really happen, but it felt this is the important part.
Huh? Awesome. So what's your event again? Yeah, I remember. That's great. Yes.
It's spread the pressure.
It's nice to not have a job, but it's also nice to have money, and it's a very complicated. I would love to just discover that in English. Haven't figured out what it is yet.
Eventually.
Like ahead of the game today, PowerPoint already
About the Lord X numbers.
What'd you say?
Wait, where? Ryan sent it. Oh, he didn't.
All right, everybody. We are a little behind, so take out your notes. We got to get going. We took a quiz on Friday. Anybody miss the quiz? I think. Does anyone not have the review list for the test? So you guys wanted 24 short IDs. Is that what we said?
I'm pretty sure we said 30. 18? I'm pretty sure.
5? Actually, that would be well,
I'm not looking forward to Friday. Low of 25 below, high of like -10.
no Monday.
Oh, what?
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Are they gonna cancel
It's only
schools?
Oh no, they won't.
If we give them enough public outcry.
We don't want them to cancel school because we have to make it up. So they take away. We just don't want that.
I love how we have no extra.
We have no cushion built in this year. Last year we had a cushion, so when there was a snow day, we could add a day to make up. But we don't have any cushion this year. Yeah, we don't get me wrong. I like a day off as much as anybody else, but we do not want to snow.
In other states, they have like a week off when
Huh?
When a little snowflake.
Oh, yeah, Washington, you should see it. Every single
Well-
time it would snow, you would have a day off for this.
I know.
The only problem with that is though, it's always around 30 to 35, so it gets really icy there.
I think that was the biggest.
that was the
reason,
thing.
icy roads.
All right, everybody, let's get going. We're a little behind here. And, oh, I'm still filming. Everybody say goodbye. Oh,
Goodbye.
have you guys acknowledged the rug?
Oh, yeah.
Have you acknowledged the rug, everybody?
Especially my friends.